Hi, everyone. Thanks for that introduction. It's really great to be here, really great to see all of you here. And I thought I would start by saying that I hope you all enjoyed this morning's session on AI as much as I did. It was a really great session, no? But one thing, and I don't mean to be a party pooper, but amid all this sort of excitement and enthusiasm, along with the critical reflection about the possibilities of AI, the one thing that wasn't mentioned was the tremendous amount of energy that AI and its data centers will require and are requiring. Amidst all the questions that we have about AI and its potential impact, perhaps at this point, where things stand now, the only certainty is that the continued adoption and use of AI at current rates will only significantly contribute to carbon emissions and the warming of our planet. So on that note, welcome to this afternoon's session, Designed for the Future of Sustainability. As Dawn mentioned earlier this morning, in some ways the title of this session is a little bit misleading or imprecise in that what we're going to do is argue that, in fact, we need to go beyond sustainability. Now, if I can continue my Debbie Downer streak for just one more moment, I probably don't need to remind everyone about the current, well, for lack of a better term, catastrophic trajectory that our planet is on. You know, all the floods, the droughts, the heat waves, the interrelated pandemics, climate refugees, and food system collapses that we can all expect. Things that we read about in the news every day if we aren't already experiencing them ourselves. And so in design, we've been rightly focusing on sustainability for a long time. We've also been focusing on human-centered design. Now, this is a term that comes up a lot, that has been coming up a lot over the years. It came up this morning, it's going to come up later this afternoon. But the two, sustainability and human-centered, are related, and they seem very difficult to argue with. But here in this session, we're going to ask, what if sustainability is no longer enough? And what if being human-centered is, in fact, what got us in the ecological mess that we're in the first place? I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So what's wrong with sustainability? In principle, nothing. It's all good. But in practice, sustainability has come to kind of mean simply minimizing the damage that we do, right? Maybe using a little bit less material here, using a better material there, being more efficient in this way, and promising that this component or that component was going to be eventually recycled and reused by someone at some point in the future. But given how much damage we've already done to our planetary systems, it seems increasingly clear that we no longer have the luxury of simply being less bad. And in fact, what we need to do through our actions is to not just minimize the damage, but in fact, do things to help heal the planet, to create a net positive effect, or to regenerate. And regenerative practices is something that we're going to talk about this afternoon. Now, what's wrong with being human-centered? Of course, again, in principle, nothing. It sounds great, although it makes you wonder, you know, who was at the center before. Well, you know, of course, we need to design for humans, but I think we are increasingly aware of the fact that we also need to design for non-humans. And in fact, it's the human-centric approach, which is a relatively new idea in the course of human history, traceable to the European Enlightenment just a few hundred years ago. But the idea that we exist at the center of everything and the rest of the planet is there for our use and exploitation is again what has got us to the point where we are, when instead we ought to be seeing ourselves not as separate from nature, but intertwined with the other life forms that we share this planet with, whose survival, our own survival, is dependent on. So, can we go from sustainable to regenerative, and can we go from human-centric to, let's say, more than human-centric, designing for everyone and everything, once again, to ensure our own survival? Now, what could this look like? If you'll bear with me for just one more second, I'd like to share an example from my institution, the Nieuwe Instituut in the Netherlands. About 2 years ago, we became the world's first zoop, Now, the ZOOP is a governance model that was developed in-house by one of our researchers that brings non-human interests and voices into an organization's decision-making processes. So giving non-human life representation in our hierarchy, essentially. This manifests as a speaker for the living who's been appointed to our board of directors, an in-house working group that identifies priorities and timelines for us to reach our goal, which is to continuously increase the life-supporting capacity of our organization. Again, not minimizing the harm we do, but actually creating a net positive effect. Now, this might sound a little bit strange at first. You know, you have someone on your board representing the ducks in your pond and the microbes in the garden and the birds and the bees and so on and so forth. But in fact, it's not that strange. When we look at the history of change and progress, things that always seem funny, strange, or implausible at first are only funny, strange, and implausible until they're real. Once they're real, if they somehow work, they become normal and obvious, right? And in fact, since we became the first ZOOP, 3 other organizations have become ZOOPs with no less than 20 more on the way. And at a macro level, we of course owe a huge debt to the rights of nature movement, which over the past 20 years has brought recognition of the legal rights of nature in the national laws and constitutions of countries like Ecuador, New Zealand, Uganda, India, as well as over 150 municipal and local governments worldwide. So today, this afternoon, we have some fantastic designers who are going to share some of their regenerative and more than human approaches to design. And we're really lucky to also have at the end a discussion with Yu-Ning, who is the CEO of Singapore's National Parks Board. Through this discussion, perhaps we can begin to think about how these more theoretical approaches, like more than human, et cetera, might in fact fit within policy frameworks here in Singapore. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Boonserm Premthada, who is really amazing. I'm not going to read everybody's bios because they're in the program, but I'll summarize by saying that Boonserm founded his architecture studio, Bangkok Project Studio, in 2003. He has been an amazing teacher at Chulalongkorn University, a visiting professor at Columbia University in New York, and the University of Hong Kong. He has shown his work at the Royal Academy of Art, and I just saw his amazing pavilion at the Bruges Triennial. In his bio, Boonserm refers to the fact that he was born in a slum in central Bangkok, that he is 70% deaf, and that he never studied abroad. And in this sense, he is, in his words, an uninfluenced wild orchid who grows without shade and dominant, without the influence of shade or dominant theories, if I'm not mistaken. And at a time when we really need to rethink radically the ways in which we see things, do things, and approach things, when we in the design world not only need to learn new skills, but also unlearn old ones. I would say we need more wild orchids like Boonserm, and so please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you so much, Aric. Thank you so much, everyone. I started, and my work is very easy work. It's making sense. When it makes sense, I do. When it doesn't make sense, I don't do. So it is very, very easy when I started, and everything is my life. The non-human centered architecture is one of the projects that I start with and work with an animal. It's a very big animal in Thailand. It's like an elephant. Yes, I always ask myself every day about who am I. This is I don't know, because I cannot find the answer. When I make this project, it's the Elephant World project, I think it's a non-human center. This is one of the important that is I think about. It's a non-human center. It's not only about the human, but we have to living with other living species like an elephant. The project is started in 2015, and we set up the question about what the role does the architecture play in protecting the elephant, and the good people restore the forest, the building the community economy. My architecture is led to the question, how is the human and the nature and the other living species can live together? Yes, this is, we want to make it this project to amplify the word is the humanity by showing the empathy for the elephant. The project is situated in the northeastern of Thailand. It's very poor, it's very hot. And the village people is they set up that 400 years ago. They have their own culture, and the village is close to the national reserve forest. The elephant and the human live together in the same house, in the same room. Sometimes this is the lifestyle of the human and elephant. In Thailand, the elephant is not our slave or not forced labor. They are a family of us. In the project, we comprise the graveyard, we call elephant graveyard, and the temple, and the pond, and the pathway, and the house. This is the living place in the elephant and the human. When the economic it grows, the environment is what destroy. In this village also, and this forest also. And when the forest destroy, elephants have no food, have no water, so they have no choice. The keeper and the elephant have to go to the tourist city to beg the money for buy the food in the tourist city, like the Pattaya, like the Phuket, like it and many tourist cities when you come. During the way, the elephant is sick, some it die. So this is very the problem. The project is I started the idea how to bring the elephant back home, and I started what is the non-human centered. This is an elephant Vinci that is my first drawing that we think about an elephant first. The project is comprised and the big observation tower and the cultural courtyard and the elephant museum. The observation tower, we make it the observation tower to reviving the forest. Normally it's it's like the world is too fast. It's very fast for me. I make it a tower with people to slow down. To just it takes time to climbing the stair, to absorb the atmosphere, every story. And then we make it like everything is in ventilation, using the wind it blow, and like it and the enclosure of the building, and the floor and the staircase also. On the rooftop, it's very good wind, so it's being it like the apitong seat. This is the seat is like the wing is like the helicopter, and used in the wind it blow on the top, and make it like the tower to generate the new forest. I hope that in the future we cannot see the tower because the forest is cover the tower. This is my intent about. This is not about the architecture. It's about the tower that connected with the landscape from the ground to the sky. Another building is we make it cultural courtyard. The courtyard is related about recreation of the elephant, the cultural event, and a religious ceremony. We make it the place is two places. In the middle place is for the elephant to recreation, and it's allowed by the theater. And make the ventilation by make it like very simple, the gable big loop with the hole for the ventilation. an elephant to come to inside and enjoy and daily activity because the elephant, when they're living, they need to walking a lot. This is under scale for the elephant. Yes, the elephant, it needs the water. And I dig the water. For the elephant, it can use the water. When I dig the water, I get the soil. So I bring the soil to Burma, it makes the theater. And we do it and only one thing and get the two architecture, and the one is the infrastructure. This building is not only the architecture, but it is an infrastructure also. Elephant is very happy to take a bath. And the tree is try to grow up through the roof. And another building is an elephant museum. We want to make it a museum. It's not a multimedia or it is a technology museum. This is a life museum that the people, the visitors come to see, and the life of the Kui village. The idea, the museum have no door. It's just like the open air museum, and the elephant and the human can come together. Bring the human inside, and the elephant is outside. Look at the human. It's the same species. Yes, this is, and I want the people to learn from the village people by their mouth. They speaking, teach me a lot. Then it's like that this uncle. I asked when this uncle is, and his son was killed by his elephant. So I asked him, what happened? How do you feel when your elephant killed your son? And he looked at me from head to toe, and he said to me that, do you want me to bring my elephant to go to the cell? No, I cannot do it. Because the elephant is my son also. So I want to continue to take care of them. Yes, we make something like the architecture. It's made from the brick. The brick is repetition. And repetition, it becomes to the memory. And from the memory, it becomes to the remember. This is the one thing that I think about when I decided. I decided only the 50%. And the rest is decided by the nature. This is one of an idea and my spirituality in my architecture. This is my architecture, yes, imperfection, mistake, and surprising. My architecture is perform the three functions: preserve the culture, revive the forest, and the self-sustained community. Respect to each other is very important. After we finished the project, in the Elephant World project, we feel like an elephant have to eat it. They eat the food a lot all day, so they produce the dung. I bring the dung to make the brick. And the brick is, the dung is everywhere, and we produce the brick in the Versailles Palace and in the Royal Academy of Art in London. So the dung in the palace, this is yes, this is something like it. And this is the brick is not a recycled material. It's not an upcycled material, but it is the life cycle of the material because elephants have to eat, happy to eat, and I happy to produce the brick. Yes, this is we make something not only about and make the architecture. Sometimes the dung make us it very good health. The recent project is I start with something is related. It's about the animal. That is very small species animal. It's like in the Xichang Island. It's not a tourist island. Make it like it, and that is very far from the Singapore because it's the eastern side in the Thai Gulf. The project is the Xichang is very it's shortage of the water and not interesting for people to come to visit it. Only it's like the village people, like the fishermen, So it's this is an idea I want to make it like an art museum, and being the art museum to related about the sea life animal, and we study about it and the level of the sea is the high and the low, and this is my study, and very interesting about the underground and seashell is like the oyster, and study about the level up and down, and we interesting and about the animal. The humanity is not about the human relationship. We adapt our humanity to our relationship with other living creatures on the planet. The respect and the contempt we show to the animal reflected the value of us as a human love. The first question that I ask myself, who am I? Yes, it's right now I can answer that. I am a human. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Boonserm. That was really amazing. About a year ago, Boonserm and his wife, I was privileged enough to be taken by them to a restaurant in Ayutthaya that Boonserm had designed, working with a community of mostly elderly women called the Artisans. So if you're ever in Bangkok or Ayutthaya, it's really amazing. You should definitely go. Our next speaker is Joachim, who is the co-founder of Terreform 1, based in New York, also a professor of practice at New York University. Mitch has, another one of those people with those amazing CVs, Fulbright Fellow, TED Fellow, Wired Magazine, Smart List, Rolling Stone, 100 Americans changing the world, or something like that. But all well-deserved for his work in, as he puts it, designing against extinction. So please welcome Mitch to the stage.
Super great to be here. I'm going to share some of the work that we do in Brooklyn, New York. Co-founder of Terreform 1, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And yes, we work, our motto is Design Against Extinction. This is a recent monograph that acknowledges the enormous amount of people that work with us. Our staff and the folks, all of them are in there in footnotes, citations, and credits. It's not just one person doing this. And I think this is a number that has influenced us, if not just, well, certainly Terreform, but all of us. It's 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the average mean temperature globally, which has risen to that point. According to the United Nations, it's very difficult to survive as humanity when we continue bringing this number up. And also, we're expecting more and more of us on this planet. So 11 billion humans by the end of the century. What's traffic going to be like? How we're going to live? What's housing? All of these things are real problems that we need to solve. And the one that I felt directly troubled by, well, all of us are troubling, but this one particularly is that since I've been alive, since the 70s, half of all life has disappeared, gone. Every 14 minutes, we lose another species on this planet. It's not acceptable. I feel complicit in that as a designer to stop it. So here's some folks that are doing some good work. These are people at the San Diego Zoo. This is the last of its kind of northern white rhino that is going extinct. There's only 2 left, so it's effectively extinct. It's the mother and the daughter. But this was produced from science and design. It's a IVF white rhino fetus that is coming from a species that's extinct using a surrogate mother and some cryogenics, etc. This is the right direction. We've got to start thinking like that. Call this field multi-species design, non-human-centered design, plant-based architecture. I guess I'm in the right place when these things are being said. Where we design for more than just people. And these are modules here where our clients are things like lizards and butterflies, etc. And that might sound weird. It is. We're not really sure if they're always happy, but we work very hard to think about the integration in our everyday lives with these kinds of species. This was a project to build awareness. It's a cryogenically preserved salamander that's inside there with all its necessary biomass. And this egg slowly decays over 7 years. It was for the Countdown project. And it's made of paraffin waxes and mycelium. And inside is all the biomass necessary for this salamander and fertilized eggs to jumpstart a little bit of its life. But it's certainly not going to save them all. It's about people learning about species locally and what's happening to them. And then working with different biotech-based materials. So this is my daughter, where we designed a chair for her in a lab made out of mycelium and acetobacter. It's something that you could grow, and it's a chair that you can also eat. So she brought it into kindergarten, says, Daddy makes furniture, that you can eat. It doesn't taste so good, but you can eat your crayons, your glue, and your chair. And that's a new thing. This is another project we did, which is a mycelium-based system with plyboot, and we're growing mushrooms along with plyboot to make triply curved components that when you're done with this chair, you throw it into a garden and it feeds thousands of other forms of life. It's about abundance. And then working on something like this for the last 17 plus years. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but this is grafting in osculate matter to form a contiguous vascular system or shaping woody plants into usable geometries so there's no distinction between architecture and landscape. And after trying for a long time, and I'm skipping all the research slides because there's just not enough time, we found that this is probably a better way to do it. In agriculture, we grow willows to about 3 to 5 meters in length, and they're cut down, pelletized, and used as a form of renewable energy. So we thought, can we go from, here we're going from agriculture to energy. Can we go from agriculture to architecture? Can we grow our own homes? So this is one of the versions of the Home Alive project. Inside there is the sort of the core of the system, which is the toilets and the kitchen, etc. All in there. I can't grow toilets or kitchens, or windows are very hard. We can do the structure, but the rest would be conventional, incredibly green materials. But we have to recognize that at some point, if you care about the humans, you got to figure that out. But it's mostly grow as much as we can. And finally, we came with this system, which, frankly, we almost forgot the humans in this system. It's a multi-species architecture where we're growing plants, multiple stories, into a diagrid structure to actually create a building. And we use scaffolding, and we take that scaffolding away after 5 to 7 years, and the building is held and supported by living plants. So there's a village of such structures like this. You could have many of these homes together, all kinds of families living into the landscape where they're a positive contribution to the environment. As much as possible, they're contributing to oxygen, they're contributing to erosion, the city level and the soil. They're protecting all of it because it's trees, it's not dead lumber. And the lumber here in the scaffolding, this is the version that we have built in upstate New York, gets reused again to grow the next house and then grow the next house. So here we're taking from a farm all of those willows. They're 15 to 30 feet in height. We're grafting them together on these scaffoldings. They're crisscrossing to get strength in the geometry. They're going up to second tiers, so we're connecting crown to root, and we create a geometry that will last for 100, 200 years, depending on your understanding of plant health. Here it is. This is its first year it's been growing. So this is a version of it that's in upstate New York. And in between that are all these multi-species panels where we realized this definitely was not really for humans. It was all about creating a kind of a terrestrial reef. So it's like a land coral. It's about jump-starting or increasing or intensifying biodiversity in that area. Because every place around this land conservation is surrounded by roads, Walmarts, Americans and whatever they're doing, everything was a place where animals would be killed. So here's a place where they get a chance to create a food web, a local ecotone, survive and thrive. This is one of the elevations, so you could see the different multi-species wall panel systems. We used jute, crochet. So that was, we couldn't find robots to make crochet. We thought about doing that. My background's from MIT. We thought there's no robot that can crochet yet. I'm sure AI will figure that out. So we designed systems that were very human-centered. They were then placed in pine rosin and different types of beeswax to preserve them. It's also, we did a lot of 3D printing of algae in those systems. And then here you could see the multi-species panel and all the different creatures that were there, all the different habitats it was designed for. And on day one, when we brought these panels to the site, which was very interesting, one of our teammates screamed, "Ah!" Avantika, like I thought, we don't have insurance, I hope she's not hurt or something like that. She was screaming because there was a family of toads that had moved in within a few hours of these things on site. So you get to see an idea of the scale of this structure. So about 40 feet tall, those scaffolds come down. This is the winter version, and then here is the one that we're growing upstate New York. We're allowing for all kinds of weeds and other systems to take over. We believe that as much as possible, we'll just let nature do its thing and be a part of the design of that building. All those arches are parametric because we weren't sure about the structure of the different willows and their capacity from PSI and strengths and bearing. So we have different sort of geometries. So it's a continuous testing prototype. And then this guy is one of our clients. And I just read that it's not so special in Singapore, actually, for something like this, as an idea of food. So one of these, and I don't know, I'm not reading the audience, you guys are just looking like, I don't know. I'm not gonna eat this guy, I'm from Brooklyn. I will eat a powderized version of it that's made into bagels, bonbons, pasta, what have you. I can't eat things with legs that's screaming or whatever. But there's a reason why we're working with this. The United Nations in 2013 said we gotta stop eating all the cows, pigs, chicken, and lamb. Think of using insect-sourced protein. And I know here there's 16 insects that are approved for consumption in Singapore. Amazing. I think 0 in Brooklyn. But it's 300 times the greenhouse gas emissions saved and 2,000 gallons of water saved if you eat for insect-based powder versus cows, which is pretty enormous. So we use a technology called architecture, light, air, space, gravity. We designed shelters for these crickets so they would live super happy lives, get very fat, and then die of old age in like 6 weeks. And then they're harvested by hand, and then they're turned into bags of chirp chips, etc. So this is the cricket shelter and farm. That's showing you the crickets on the outside, just to get an idea of scale. We worked with Michelin chefs to get just the right flavor, so we've tuned their gut metabolism with feeding them apple cores and lime rinds and orange peels, and they're super juicy, tasty crickets. And then we had to think of how do we get them to propagate. So this was a design assignment that you only get at Terreform, which is a sex pod, this thing here. So crickets will, the females do their come hither looks, and the males, and they reproduce. And they're happy because they're chirping. There's a stratulation of the crickets moving their wings back and forth, which means the men are not looking for survival or jobs. They're really happy, and they're just looking to procreate. And that's what these fins are on the top. They're called cricket horns, which accentuates the sound of that chirping. And then just like 2 more things to show that we've been up to. Here is a farm system called the plug-in ecology. It's designed so you have a relationship between where your food comes from and the plate that you eat it. It wouldn't grow things like corn or wheat. We have Iowa to do that and other places in the United States. But arugula, mince, wheatgrass, you grow it on the surface of this pod. It tells you when it's ready, and then you harvest it. It's got 9 columns of sub-irrigation that trickles down and feeds these double-skin pots. And it's part sort of furniture, part farm, sphere, whatever you want to call it. It's quite an interesting little project. It has a wheel-based system so it can get the most amount of solar income. And finally, the last thing we're working with for some time are butterflies. So I got 3 daughters, and I love butterflies. These are painted ladies. We had a commission for the American Museum of Natural History to think about butterflies and how to feed them, how they sleep, mud bathing, all kinds of fun things. We were working with monarchs. So here's one of the butterfly feeder systems where they lay eggs and they do butterfly perching. Monarch butterflies are native to New York. They moved from New York to Mexico, and they are going extinct. They were red-listed species. We've been doing this research for 7 years. They went from being red-listed with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to now creatures that are officially endangered, which is horrific. So we designed a building where the outer skin of the building doesn't lose a single square footage of space, but is a sanctuary for monarchs. The entire outside is a place for them to have habitats, areas that are safe. Designed it with BASF. This is the greenest possible concrete made. It's called Green Sense, impregnates fly ash. It's structural, it's fireproof, etc. It's also designed with the geometry of monarch butterflies in mind. It's got milkweeds inside the section. It's this grand vertical meadow and pollinator garden, all for the butterflies. When you look out the window of this building, you see it teeming with life. This is the full-scale 2-ton engineered section that we did for the Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian in New York. And on the day that we had started, we had monarch butterflies inside there. They're not a place where you can keep live animals, so they were released into the conservatory gardens, but you could see that this was a space designed specifically for them. And then just having an idea of what the green city would look like. So a lot of our work is helping the everyday person, I guess now AI can do it, but the everyday person understand what a socio-ecological city is. Teeming with things like solar PV on surfaces of building, vertical axis wind turbines, a riparian corridor going through the center of our streets, some automating of maintenance, vertical farms for food and air quality. And this is not the future that we want necessarily. It's just one of many possible futures. It's a polemic, so we can argue about how to get to the greenest possible city. Anyway, that's our work. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Mitch. And just to be clear, we love you AI guys. It's nothing personal. And also, if I'm not mistaken, we're serving like cricket cookies or something here, right? Yeah, so we'll have cricket or insects for cocktails later. So, not Mitch's though, but. Our next speaker is Zach Toe. He probably needs no introduction for many of you. Zach writes his bio in a very humble way. He talks about how he grew up in his father's nurseries, pulling weeds and pruning plants and so on and so forth. But I get the impression he's really become a bit of a local hero as founder of GWS Living Art and City Sprouts, the kind of network of urban farms that bring sort of people and plants together as part of a broader social initiative, an intergenerational initiative that Zach is going to talk about, as well as, I think, his entry into the interspecies relations realm. So please welcome Zach.
Hope you had a good lunch. Super honored to be here. So today I'll just share two main stories on the interweave between nature, designing for nature, as well as people. So in 2019, we actually managed to tender for a space at 102 Henderson Road. It's an old school governed by Singapore Land Authority. And we tendered it and we managed to get it, surprisingly. And it's actually a very interesting project. Henderson is a space where you actually see the HDB. I was told that Singapore, we have a lot of acronyms. HDB actually stands for Housing Development Board. So it's a public housing that recently transacted for $1 million. So that is kind of like Henderson. But at the same time, Henderson has a very senior and aged kind of population. So the space of this community urban farm that we tendered for is actually meant to bridge between the seniors as well as the youths and the young people. So the community urban farm we took over is the hall and the entire school field, and the classrooms became the nursing home, mega nursing home, and the other side is actually the childcare. So through the years, we actually managed to understand about how to convert old spaces into vibrant community spaces. And fast forward to 5 years, we managed to go through COVID. It wasn't a great idea to start a community space at the peak of circuit breaker, we call it in Singapore. But we did one-person tour, we did 6 people tour. When it became 3 people tour, we also did 3 people types of programs. So we kind of did all the different permutation and commutation of circuit breaker. And now, fast forward, we are also running spaces such as Vida City that recently we launched is to support early stage startups and people that really wants to do something about sustainability or want to grow their own food, want to start a business is bored of their everyday job or they just want to do something else. And as well as Vivita, which is a very early stage kind of program that facilitates unstructured play in the youths, and we want to kind of promote that kind of unstructured learning of a kind of no rules and very top-down kind of approach. So through the years also, the farm at 102 Henderson Road, we run average about 100 community programs now every year, every month, big to small. We have farmer markets, we have learning journeys, we have intergenerational program where the seniors teach the youth the types of games they used to play, not like roadblocks, but more of chapte or different 5 marble and 5 stone, that kind of things. Even I myself never really played some of these games. We learned that different types of programs can bring different kind of community people together. And the type of program that you structure, whether is it for humans, communities, or also you can bring in other elements of the everyday life. And we knew that this was an important thing when we saw the entire field of a school field transform into a vibrant kampong, as we call it in Singapore, Malay term for community space. We knew that this is something that money can't really buy and is important for building a very strong social compact. So we bring in different parts of the community, such as youth, elderly, people with disabilities, through the different programs that we have, in order for people to understand the different problems that each of the micro-community is also facing. But today I want to share one of the stories, is designing for nature. I had the opportunity to be part of a project in 2021. It's a Totem for the 21st Century project. So this was something really cool and interesting. The whole idea of a totem, it just sounds extremely interesting already. Usually we design spaces for the community, and it was the first time that the entire team came together. It's a whole team. The brainchild is Richard Hassel, who is the co-founder of WOHA. And he came to me and he's like, Zach, you should join the team. And I said, what can I do for the Totem project? I mean, I kind of know some vertical green wall kind of systems. We do green roofs, irrigation systems, rainwater harvesting. We build community programs, things like that. But I say, like, you can build the green sausages for the totems. It's like green sausages. I love the whole idea of a green sausage. So I immediately took on the offer, and Richard was always bringing with ideas, and the team was very interesting. We had people that specializes just in birds in Singapore, the different species of birds, how the birds stay, how big the houses will be. So week after week, these are the kind of topics that we are talking about. Will the sparrow live in this house? The hole, is it too big? The material choice, is it correct or wrong? Things like that. So first and foremost, we went quite deep into the type of species of birds that we wanted to build for the totem. And obviously, we needed to know the native distribution of the different species of birds. And of course, the totem have to look nice as well, as the intersect between humans and nature. And it will be placed in between urban environments to ensure that the totem will be inspiring for the others, and it can be a movement for other cities around the world. So we actually launched the first totem at their office, at WOHA's office at the top, and you can see in the middle photo is where me and Richard is kind of fixing out these green sausages. There's some black cloth in between because the ferns still take some time to grow. And fast forward, we just checked back in March 2024. We installed in around 2023 to end of 2023. And in 2024, the ferns are fully grown, but unfortunately, we don't have birds yet. So there are some stingless bees that came to live in the house, but we are hoping for the birds to come by soon. So I'll just share a bit about the process of developing these green sausages. So one of the things that you see if you drive down the highways of Singapore, you sometimes see you obviously see these huge rain trees. Sometimes you see these ferns coming down from the rain trees. There's bird nest ferns, there's staghorn ferns, and there's one of these ferns that looks like little strings and long beans, but they are not long beans. They are called Pyrosia longifolia. So these ferns are actually native to the Southeast Asian area, as well as is native to Singapore. So these ferns, another fun fact is that they don't need any kind of like irrigation. They depend on rainfall, as with how it's growing on on these rain trees. And one of the criteria we needed for these green sausages is that we didn't want any kind of irrigation system, we didn't want any kind of maintenance, and we wanted it to really habitat by itself and attract different kind of birds. So this was the fun of the choice. We tried other kinds of Pyrosia, but this kind of worked the best. And the metal tubes looking thing, that was the casing for these green sausages. These are actually water filters for fish tanks. And this was kind of, we found different kind of diameters for these casings, and the round one obviously is the best. I think most sausages are also in round. Very rarely they are in square, so we thought that kind of fit well. And the black color cloth is just some sound noise cushioning for it to just kind of look nice. Otherwise, it's too shiny, and the birds may wonder how come in this green sausage there's plants and shiny metal. So we kind of wrapped that around the thing, and we implemented the entire thing. So the process of designing the sparrow totem, of how these Pyrosia columns will fit into the column, and how it intersects with the holes where the birds can go in and nest, the whole process was really about not designing for humans in centric, but really thinking about the birds. So it was really interesting as a process. And another case study we would like to share is that at the middle of the farm, we kind of drew that parallel with after that totem project. So once we took over the entire farm, there was a few options. You could either lay the entire farm with greenhouses for people to come by and do farming. But what we did is we decided to leave a central part of the farm, 10 meters by 10 meters, and we decided to build this wayang stage. Most of the people that saw this wayang stage actually came by and told me like, hey Zach, this is actually quite ugly, you should kind of take it down. Maybe a farm of orchard trees will look better. Then I'm like, no, this wayang stage is important. Because I knew that the wayang stage is something that is of a lot of history. And in the middle of this wayang stage, we had Ficus bengalensis. And Ficus bengalensis is a beautiful tree. The bark is actually white and smooth, and people can kind of touch it, feel it. The leaves are actually round and bright green. And sometimes you have these roots hanging down, and people can walk through and feel the roots. And there's also the reason why we plant a Ficus bengalensis, because there's a heritage tree at Tiong Bahru, which is already classified as a heritage tree, which is ficus. So that's one of the reasons why we planted this tree in the middle of the wayang, and we also dedicated a huge space in our farm for it to be a community space for these three main reasons. Firstly, wayang is a Malay term, but the whole idea of a wayang stage actually originates from a Chinese heritage of a getai, of performing by the streets and things like that. But wayang is really kind of like a mix and mash between a Malay and a Chinese culture, so it's really a heritage kind of thing. And a lot of people may not know the myth on the Red Hill. So Henderson, our first farm was at Red Hill, so we wanted a wayang stage for people to also tell stories to each other, tell myths about their own stories, maybe just talk nonsense to one another. So like myths on the Red Hill. So a Red Hill myth is a young boy who was super smart. He saved the whole village from dying because they planted a lot of banana trees. And then this swordfish that was killing the villagers ended up dying on these banana trees because the swordfish will go through the banana stem. And the sultan was very jealous, so he decided to kill the young boy, and then the blood flow on the hill. That's why Red Hill is called Red Hill. So we wanted that kind of like storytelling of like, oh, my grandfather, he grew grass, and then my father forced me to grow trees, and then so on and so forth. So it's also a practical space where it can hold people together. So we have tarot card reading during Halloween in our farm. We have very random stuff that farmers just want to do. They want to have a beer party on a Sunday afternoon, whatever. Anything goes. And growing up as a young boy, my dad paid me $1.50 an hour to do farming in the nursery. I wasn't very happy with that because McDonald's was paying $6 an hour. I wanted to work in McDonald's to serve hamburgers and whatever. So when I grew up, I told myself I'll be in banking or consulting. Something is an office job, not really in nature, but lo and behold, after army, I came out, we started to build different systems. So one of the main focus that we do is really to supply a stable supply of landscape for nature, for cities, as well as we develop innovative technologies for greening up cities. But above that, after 2 to 3 years, I realized that the intersect between humans and people is important. So that's why we kind of started City Sprouts. We wanted to inspire communities that's interested in stuff like that, and communities that are also not interested in sustainability, not interested in nature, to also come by our farm to have fun, and we have different kind of programs to kind of attract them and suck them in. So we can hold like a AI event in our farm, and then all these, and then you can all these people will end up touching the soil. I think we had a program with some huge tech companies to come by and plant rice for us. So they go barefoot, and then their knees are in the mud, and then they plant kind of rice. And we believe like these are the stuff that's important. It makes us human. I think one of the common topics in today morning discussion and across a lot of esteemed panels is that I think being human is important across all these different tech. So I think being human is important, and this is one of the core beliefs that what we work for. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Zach. And last but not least, our final speaker before the discussion with Yu-Ning, the final speakers are Katharina Mischler and Thomas Traxler, the founders of the Vienna-based studio mischer'traxler. Katharina and Thomas have really sort of made a name for themselves with their incredible work looking at, well, I think craft and technology at first, but now more and more ecology as well. They have shown in almost every exhibition and biennial for design you can think of. They've worked with clients ranging from Hermes to Swarovski to Perrier Jouet. We first met in 2011 when they were awarded the Designer of the Future prize by Design Miami. And we're really lucky to have them today to tell us a little bit about their journey that kind of brings us full circle to, let's say, non-human representation with AI. Please welcome Thomas and Katharina.
Yeah, thanks for the kind introduction. And it's something we never expected to say, that probably we are bridging the morning session and that we are bridging ecology to AI, but probably we are. I'm Katharina Mischler, and next to me is Thomas Traxler, and together with our team, we form mischer'traxler Studio, an artistic design practice based in Vienna, Austria. Normally, a lot of our projects are balancing between handcraft and technology. We create projects that depict nature, tell stories, raise questions, and create atmosphere. But today, we want to mainly focus on our relationship, especially our evolving relationship with nature. Because right from the beginning, a lot of our projects are dealing a lot about appreciating nature's importance as a source of life, as a source of resources that we are extensively using these days, and a source of inspiration. And actually, one of the first projects that the studio started with was about raising awareness about the loss of biodiversity.
Yeah. And the project is called Real Limited, and since 2008 we are working on it, and it's still an ongoing project, and it really started with this tremendous amount of loss of different species and different specimens. And we wanted to show this with a limited edition, but instead of creating a limited number for the art market, we wanted to create a number which is relinking to reality. So we talked with biologists to give us estimations of different specimens still existing from highly endangered species in Austria, and this was then our limited number we are working with. So, for example, the Marumba quercus, by the biologists, they estimate 800 to 900 specimens of this species left in whole Austria. We represented them in copper. Each single moth of this 150 moth was having a number representing one still alive in Austria. And by that we could create 4 lamps. And every time we sell a piece from this real limited series, 10% of the selling price are going to the Naturschutzbund. It's like an environmental fund in Austria, which is then buying land to just keep for nature. And in 2012, we had the chance to also represent one whole population left from Cuculia tanaceti. And the estimated, if you see the estimated 1,200 specimens left in this kind of small area, you suddenly get a feeling, and it makes actually this data tangible, and you get a feeling what it means, that it's really urgent to act, but you also get a gut feeling for the number of 1,200, for example. And over the years, we continued to make different projects within this series with different fauna and flora. And obviously also, many other projects which are dealing with the importance of nature. But over the recent, if you look at it, it still was highlighting nature's importance. And over the recent years, we figured out that there was a big shift in our perspective going on over the last years, both personally but also in our projects. It was a shift where we have to kind of go away from us humans looking at our natural surrounding, being as a separate entity, to really admit and also enhance or see that we are just one part of a big web of life, of all the different creatures. And the first project where we could really focus on this interconnectedness was called Embodied Nature, and it was an interactive installation we did for Maison Perrier-Jouet in 2021. And more than 100 different species from 9 researched ecosystems from all over the world were represented, made by painted metal mesh species in the room, all of the species having pretty much equally the same size, showing that there's none species more important than the others. So an algae was as big as a tree, and the microbiome was microbacteria was as big as a mammal. And when you entered the room, you were detected by various cameras, and your silhouette was actually projected as a kind of swarm of species of one of these ecosystems. So we wanted to show that we are nature as well. And so we think it is also quite a lot for us also about understanding nature. And this is also something quite difficult. I mean, we are both born and raised in the center of Europe, where there's quite a big disconnection of nature. And on top of that, since more than 2,000 years, they tell us that man is on top of all other living creatures. And we have to realize that this is probably not really the case. And we have to shift from a really anthropocentric to an ecocentric worldview. And that also means that we have to understand humanity as one part of a larger interconnected ecosystem, and considering nature as an equal participant in our decision and also decision making. But this raised in us like different questions, like how can ecosystems be better heard? Or how can they also participate in a human discourse? And for us, until now, the answer is called Themis, and it sounds a little bit like this.
We are not mere resources to be exploited or obstacles to be overcome. We are living, breathing beings with inherent rights to exist and thrive. Grant us the respect and consideration we deserve, and we will continue to sustain life in all its diversity and beauty.
So Themis are the collective voices of ecosystems, and since 2022 they address different ecosystems, address humans about the importance of their nature and the ability to have enough space. And each of the ecosystems exists, of course, of many, many different species, which are all making up this one ecosystem, which is represented. And we also added like non-living elements like stones and sand to complete the picture. And so this is one of our approaches to design for a non-anthropocentric world. And this was also the subtitle of an exhibition we were invited for, and it was at that time, this was in 2022, there was a big heated discussion in Austria about the planned tunnel underneath a natural park next to the Danube, close to Vienna. And we were wondering actually, okay, what would actually this national park say if it would be asked? Or what would the national park say if it would be in front of court and speaking upon itself? So we asked a lawyer and environmentalist to write a speculative plea for the court.
I hereby have rights independent of human beings. I have an independent right to existence, an independent right to regeneration, and an independent right to restoration. I'm one of the last living floodplains in Central Europe, and even I'm struggling to survive.
So this was the first Themis, and it was in the exhibition together with some visualizations how it could continue and be used. And from then on, we actually feel the need and also the urge to continue and put more focus on the Themis project. And so another Themis was made for the Haifa Art Museum, where the ecosystem of a local wadi was addressing actually the visitors. And Themis were also invited to give a speech at the Fundamental Rights Forum in spring this year in Vienna. And for one short moment, all these kind of living species of Themis were as important as Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, because they were speaking right after each other. And I think this equality of importance between all living species, including human, is actually what we are aiming for.
All the Themis need a network of experts, and that's not necessarily us, but a lot of environmentalists, biologists, and organizations. They normally have the knowledge and build the framework and the foundation for the Themis to act as a dialogue partner in a meaningful and informed way. And during the process, there was a shift from I to we, not necessarily just from I, the human, to we, all living beings, but as well from I, the ecosystem, to we, all the species that make up an ecosystem. Because if you think about it, there is just no singular unit in nature. And that sounds very logical now, but in the process for us, it really wasn't. We feel like we are just in the beginning of understanding how maybe an ecosystem might address us, how species might speak. So for us, it's really a research project to come up with a tool to bring ecosystems into societies and discourse. So wouldn't it be nice to have an ecosystem as a dialogue partner in a media room, or have it join a panel discussion? And this spring we actually had, there was the chance that Themis participated in an event about nature's rights. This happened in Dresden, Germany, and the ecosystem of the Elbinsel, a very tiny island, protected island, in the river of the Elbe, was participating alongside a lot of environmentalists discussing its rights. And what was really nice to see and amazing was the reaction of the audience, but as well the reaction and the change of atmosphere in the room. Because suddenly, since nature, like the national park, was present as a persona in the room, the whole dialogue and the discussion shifted from talking about nature out there as an object to talking with nature, to actually see it as a subject. And this is the swap we actually think we need to not think of nature out there, but actually nature here. This usually works by having a real-time translation, like we have a lawyer or a biologist or an environmentalist being filmed and responding as in real time and being translated as the Themis avatar in the room to actually have the dialogue with the human partners. But as you can see in the chart, there's a lot of technical setup needed and a lot of cables and microphones. And since our goal is actually not just to have one event, but many, many more, and maybe even all around the globe, we are currently looking for fundings and ways to adapt technology and maybe to use the experts' input to have a set verified data set to train AI to then act as the Themis avatar, as actually the responding ecosystem. So the question then will be, where do we get the data from? And how will the ecosystem as well communicate? Because we think an ecosystem under pressure might sound different to one that is actually vital and happy. So ultimately, we hope to shift from an artistic experiment to a tool that should help humankind to shift our perspective. So I invite you all, go to a local forest, smell the air, maybe bend down, touch the soil, but maybe simultaneously, it could be interesting to start a dialogue with exactly that ecosystem, how we all should react to global challenges.
As you advocate for equality and justice among humans, remember that these principles need to extend to all living beings. We urge you to consider the consequences of your actions, not only on human societies and on human scales, but on the intricate tapestry of life that sustains us all. We urge you to create visions where the rights of humans and nature are upheld in harmony. Develop systems where the voices of the ecosystems, our voices, are heard and valued. And most importantly, strive for a world where dignity and respect are extended to all living beings, human and non-human alike, so that we all may survive.
Thank you.
It would be great to have Themis at the next year's Design Futures Forum. No, yeah. Okay. Well, I think as we prepare for the discussion, I will, of course, thank all the presenters who just presented. We're about to have a discussion with Hwang Yu-Ning, and we'll ask Mitch to come back to the stage as well. And there will be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions if you just scan the QR code. I think you all know what to do. But I will just briefly introduce Yu-Ning, who I imagine also needs no introduction for many of you. She is currently the CEO of the National Parks Board with, I think, over 20 years of service in the civil service, previously as chief planner for Singapore under the Urban Redevelopment Authority, with stints also with the Prime Minister. Sorry, I've always been with stints in the strategy group of the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of National Development. So please welcome Yu-Ning and Mitch back to the stage.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Hope you're still awake after that great lunch and very exciting presentations that we all heard. Thought I just kind of share a couple of slides on what we are doing here in Singapore, some of the key strategies that we are attempting to make ourselves a city in nature. Going to just dive into a few of the things that we are doing. Here I want to zoom in on Rifle Range Park to your bottom left. So it's really about trying to take the core of the nature reserve and creating new spaces for recreation, for nature habitats and all that complementary habitats to happen around it, such that it serves as an outlet. And actually, it's not just about leaving nature alone, but it's quite an active curation to provide the right conditions for nature to be restored into the area. And you can scan that QR code to read more about the actual details of that. But I think what it really creates in this case for Rifle Range Park, Nature Park, which is right next to the very pristine Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, is that it creates an outlet for recreation to happen, for species recovery to happen. Since 2015 in the National Parks Board, when we've been working on species recovery, we target to hit 100 plant species that will recover by 2030 and 60 fauna species that will recover by 2030. So these additional habitat areas beyond the nature reserves provide spaces for some of these habitats to come back. And it takes pressure off the reserves, creating more space for us to do more detailed research to understand our ecosystems better. And it also creates space for species recovery efforts that I mentioned, like in this case when we wanted to help to bring back the hornbill, because MParks, we take care of all the roadside planting, all the trees in the nature reserves and parks, 400 parks. Most of the time in Singapore, we don't really have tree hollows. So we had to create little homes for the hornbills to kind of nest in so that they have a good chance to get back. And here's an example that I think many are familiar with, Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, where we worked with the PUB, the water agency, to take out the old canal and incorporate that into a park so that there's more space for nature restoration. And the latest example, Bidadari Park, where again that strategy of trying to use the landscape and habitat treatment approach is taken very deliberately to create the right ecosystem, if you will, to bring back and strengthen the woodlands character so that in this case focusing on the bird species, all the bird species have the right habitats to come in. And we've just opened this park a couple of weeks ago, and we are keeping our fingers crossed that it's working for the birds and that we will see most, if not all, get back. And extending beyond the parks, Singapore, we with the land constraint, we really have very few parks that you can talk about, that we can set aside for parks, for greenery per se. But we want to use our roadside planting, our canal sort of edges along the way, and create these ecological corridors so that there's opportunity for nature to extend into the urban landscape along the roadside, along the canals, and into the buildings as well. So here you see along the roadside how more extensive planting, more multi-tiered planting can create new ecological corridors and byways in that sense for nature to travel through and to be restored. And in the case of buildings, also multi-layered planting. And in recent times, we have started to talk more about what is the right planting palette in order to really effectively restore nature. It goes beyond just the ecological services that we typically think of, like cooling, etc., but to create a real habitat for the species to come through. So I'll stop at that and launch into that conversation.
Great. Well, I mean, I have to admit, thank you for that, Yu-Ning, and I have to admit, and Mitch, you might agree, that certainly from the outside, I mean, Singapore seems to be especially progressive policy-wise. I mean, Mitch, you mentioned how 6 insects are approved for consumption here, 0 in Brooklyn. I think Singapore is the first country to approve the consumption of lab-grown meat, even though this is coming from American and Dutch companies. And this whole rubric of city and nature seems really quite advanced compared to even the most, ostensibly progressive places. But I'm just wondering, Yu-Ning, I asked you to maybe just sort of reflect a little bit on some of the things that you're going to hear this afternoon. I mean, when we talk about decentering humans, that's not a great political soundbite, probably, that you're going to be able to sell. Giving rights to non-humans. I mean, what is all this too far out, or is it more resonant with what you're already doing than we might think at first?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's too far out. It kind of also relates to the journey that we've seen in Singapore, where we started. Originally, the original ambition or vision was a garden city, but now we've shifted all the way to city in nature. So it's not just an anthropocentric kind of approach of having a garden around us for human enjoyment, but really it's about a city in nature, a city for all beings and not just us humans.
Yeah.
And that's why we've put in a lot more effort to look at how do we restore nature back into the landscape in different ways, whether it's through planting within the parks, but also through this concept of the ecological corridors and through actual species recovery efforts, working in the labs to recover the species and then reintroducing them into the habitats. Yeah.
I mean,
So certainly a lot of resonance with what many of the speakers were talking about. And I think many of the work like Mitch and Boonserm was doing gives a lot of clues as to how else can we go about this in not just our parks, but in our buildings as well.
Yeah, because I think any visitor to Singapore is going to notice all the vegetation in and around, well, not just around, but in buildings here. Of course, the work of WOHA being especially notable for that. Like how, this sort of effort of integrating biodiversity within the urban fabric, let's say, like not in the national parks, but in the actual urban center. How you've had some time to kind of try that out and see how it's going. I mean, where do you see the connection developing between constructing like urban infrastructure and increasing biodiversity? Because I think you mentioned at first a lot of these plantings are mostly for cooling.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of it is like landscape replacement, originally meant almost decorative for the people in the building to enjoy, as well as us to look at it visually. But given the constraints that we face in Singapore, I think we are really wanting the buildings in a way to also be part of that ecological infrastructure, if you will, to reinforce and serve as the purpose of connecting up the ecosystems. Because in isolation, in fragments, they don't function as well as probably you want to come in on that, Mitch.
Yeah. I want to come in on a lot of things. Certainly love Singapore. It's very green, and that's incredibly obvious. I mean, we visited the super trees and the cloud gardens, and it's incredible. So there is a love for nature here, a real deep connection, biophilia, whatever you want to call it. What may help further this kind of a concept in cities elsewhere is something that's rather new in the field. It's called animal-aided design. It's very similar to handicap accessibility guidelines, or I don't know, we don't call it differently abled people guidelines, whatever the term is, but that in the 80s was something that was a shock. We're not going to design stuff for the elderly. We're not going to design stuff for people who are in wheelchairs. It's not practical, but it became practical, became the rule. Animal-aided design as a concept is that beginning of that policy. I think some folks in Germany, in Stuttgart, that's right, are starting to work with that. We are as well, which is a set of terms, design conditions, also financing and economics for how these things add value and add to our quality of life. It's also we've been talking about a lot of non-human things. That's true. There's not a politician on earth that's going to, go for maybe not. Well, I don't know who's going to vote for him, not butterflies, but
they can't get to the polling booth in time, though. Die along the way.
Maybe the elephants will vote for the politicians. The thought there is that can we think about a way that we can get policy that moves this forward, that gives all kinds of beings something more than just the right to life, which is the American version. Which is, if it's endangered, okay, we won't kill you off completely. That's about it. That's as far as we go. Not things that are thriving or connected or deeply a part of our everyday lives. So that's a different approach. And I think if we can do that for, at one set of terms with ADA or handicap accessibility, we can do it for animal-aided design, and that's upscaling and upgrading all of our ideas and systems and sharing this planet in a deeper way.
Yeah, I love that this term, animal-aided design. It's kind of what we used. We called it the least cost model, but we were for the ecological corridor. But we were looking at the species. Least cost from the species movement perspective. How easy is it for certain birds and certain kind of bees and butterflies to move through the corridor in identifying the pathways? But I love that term, animal-aided.
Do you guys, and I don't know everything about Singapore, so I'm asking you, do you have bridges designed just for animals?
Oh, yeah. Okay. We have a couple of ecological bridges, bridges. And last year we just celebrated like the 10th anniversary of one of these that were across a very major expressway,
Exactly.
Bukit Timah Expressway, and it's doing very well. I think the lucky thing for Singapore is that our plants grow really fast and do very well. And so it's really thrived and become very dense and green. Funny story, quick story is that I went up this bridge with my minister. He was mounting some movement camera stuff, as well as somebody from the Singapore Nature Society, Dr. Yu-Ning Singh. And he's a bird expert, loves birds. So when we came down from the bridge, I was telling Sing Ping that, hey, when I was on the bridge, I didn't seem to hear, I just heard a lot of traffic. He said, he heard like 30 birds, different species of birds, because his ears are so tuned to the birds that he picked them up straight away. I was like, oh, a lot of traffic sound. So depending on your expertise, you know what you're looking for, and you can tune in to what's the right thing. So we do try to identify opportunities where we are not able to do it straight on the ground to build this kind of bridges. Sometimes they can be more simple. They can be just rope bridges for certain types of monkeys to get across.
Yeah.
So there's a whole form, different forms,
Mitch, we asked you to be on this panel because you have some experience trying to sort of implement some of your ideas in urban environments, like the monarch sanctuary.
Yeah, that's so cool.
You had planned to actually, there was a proposal to actually build that in, I think, Nolita in Manhattan. So what happened? And
just share it with everyone.
Is something like this possible in Singapore, in the urban core?
I don't know. I think it's definitely possible in Singapore. It seems like a lot more things are possible in Singapore. Getting it in Manhattan done is, I had some very gruff, sarcastic people in the building department with something like getting permission to put butterflies on the surface of a building. Like, well, we don't have codes for cats on balconies, so we don't have codes for butterflies. So put all the butterflies you want. Okay, thanks, people.
Let's give you a license to do it, right?
I was a little suspicious, though, if it actually happens, somebody will develop that. So it's also, and just to take a step back, there's an assumption here. It's a very big there's a lot of hubris under the idea that we can design with nature. I know that it's possible to some extent, but there are others that say, you know what, the best thing we can do is, as much as possible, preserve the landscape. A lot of areas need to be just kept away from humans entirely. Because if we're there with our canoes or hunting rifles or just pitching a tent, we're already disturbing it. So much is already gone. So maybe that the conservationists are different. They believe if you kill a tree, you can plant 3 others, and we're smart enough to figure it out. But I don't know. Most of the evidence is showing that that's not quite right. We haven't figured that out exactly. It's certainly better to do it, to think about natures and cities together. But the Garden City movement that you've been thinking of since Ebenezer Howard, turn of the last century, it's a good idea, but it certainly needs more improvement, more science.
No, I definitely agree with you. There are areas that best left alone, which is in a way kind of why we try to tier our action and take pressure off the core nature reserves. So that those areas can be left intact. And there's still a lot left to be discovered, and we don't know enough of what we don't know, and how our actions can impact those areas.
Well, this actually relates to one of the questions that we got, and maybe you already answered it already, or maybe you'd like to say some more. But one of them is, how do you find, how do you balance the building of amenities for humans in, say, a very mature forest? Should it be encouraged or not? Like, how much should we intervene in natural landscapes? And Mitch, maybe for you, how do you, because a lot of your interventions are they're very present. And for you, how much is too much intervention?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. The idea that we need to reverse direction. So I guess that's the kind of the general thought. So designing things from the non-anthropocentric viewpoint is just the beginning. That is there. We don't have necessarily the science to do all of it for every single part. For instance, we did some projects with bees, which I didn't show, but there's 3,000 species of bees in North America. We care about one, the honeybee. The science in entomology about bees, they're experts in all those different, there's specific people that just study one type of bees. For architects to be a part of it, to integrate into the city at the level of landscape, requires understanding their habitat, their brood, their life cycle, the structures of how they get food, how they rear their young. It's a lot of work. And doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but if we got to concentrate on one species to get all of the others, it becomes a very, very big problem. Maybe there's an AI solution for that, and I think we saw.
There we go again.
Yeah. I almost, actually, on that point, I agree. We were working on this concept for the United Nations, which is having a general assembly for all the other species on this planet, which would then kind of invoke ideas that we were talking about. It's just, I'm not sure if we spoke to them, what they would say. Like in most cases, they don't want skyscrapers. They don't care if kids go to school or not in wherever. They're barely at the edge of survival. I'm trying to think of something very positive to say on all of that. The bottom line is that the direction's changing. When I was studying design, we all were very dark. Everyone was reading European philosophers. No one could say solar panel in
Jameson
architecture.
just died.
And now I'm seeing that shift, and I think the more and more people just want that. And from the perspective, I shouldn't talk too much, wellness.
No, it's
right?
great.
Well certification is another system. I don't know if anyone knows what that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the idea that you design things in the interior of a space that are healthy for humans, super healthy for humans. And it's from that perspective, period. What that happens to do is it also means if it's healthy for humans, it probably is going to be healthy for the rest of the planet, most likely. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe one more question from the audience, which got a lot of thumbs ups, a lot of likes. How can we move from reactive sustainability or fixing problems to proactive sustainability, that is anticipating and preventing issues before they arise through design or in design?
Yeah.
Well, to me, it really starts, at least for Singapore, with the land constraint, starts from getting the plan right in the first place. You know, I'm thinking that if you had put the users in the right way and stayed away from the pristine, mature forests, etc., you would have minimized the need to then kind of fix things. You know, you would have minimized the need to travel and incur those mileages from traveling, because if you had it kind of planned more or less correctly, the whole idea around 15-minute city, walkable neighborhoods, etc., all serve to minimize the need for extra energy to get to the other place in the first place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a loaded question, so some very smart person knows what they're asking. I might say it falls under one single overriding predicate, and that is growth. Growth is the issue. We believe that we can grow our economies to no end, that we all can have more. Every politician who's elected promises more jobs, bigger resources, except no one stands up and gets elected because they're going to shrink everything. That's what we need. We have to reverse the direction. We have to realize there is limits to growth. That's not my term. It's been around for a long time. And that we just can't expand forever. But once you have that as a design constraint, that you don't expect unlimited growth, you think of a steady state system and design to meet that system, where it's contributing to the metabolism, helping things that are supportive of life on this earth. So no fossil fuels, but something that is green, and that when it moves around whatever object it is, scrubs the air, cleans it, and provides some sort of abundance of other resources to others. Right, that's different, I guess. I'm thinking of this on the fly, by the way. Abundance is nature. It's more for everyone and lots of it, a much better direction. A cherry tree does not produce 3 cherries. It produces thousands of cherries. It feeds squirrels, deals with the soil. It's a part of a web of life. If some of them will produce more cherries, but it recognizes it's a part of a system. If we can think of economies where we have abundance everywhere, that would probably help. But that doesn't mean everyone gets 50 cell phones. Someone might think that here. That's not what I mean.
Well, I think here you're starting to, well, you say you're talking on the fly, but you're in fact touching on a very big discussion about the possibly the incompatibility of capitalism and our ability to survive. And perhaps that's for another panel a discussion.
Yeah, the post-capitalists.
Yeah. Well, maybe I think we are running out of time, and I think I'm supposed to say something to wrap things up. Well, first of all, thanks to all the speakers and presenters, and to the organizers, to the Design Singapore Council and their amazing team. It occurred to me, because it came up earlier, that we have this sort of habit of talking about design in terms of solving problems, right? And of course, it can solve many problems on a very specific micro level. But when we're talking about broader issues, social and ecological, we're talking about very complex systems in which quote-unquote solutions oftentimes do not exist, right? With every solution, there are often unintended consequences, knock-on effects, and more often than not, one person's solution is another person's problem. And so it becomes less useful to talk about solving problems, and more perhaps constructive to talk about navigating conditions, articulating different realities, changing ways of thinking, rethinking systems, and maybe even manifesting or giving a form to different worldviews. Now this sounds very big, but in fact it's kind of what we've been talking about this session, this move from sustainability to regenerative, from human-centered to, let's say, more than human-centered. We also talked about this morning, with the AI conversation, that conversation makes it so clear to us all the things that we can't control, that we can't change. But in shifting worldviews, there's a lot of old knowledges out there that we can look to, and that we can draw from in actually making changes that we do have control over, right? And as part of that, maybe one of the keys is to also draw from multiple intelligences. When we talk about human-centered and inclusivity, let's say, we talk about needing to draw upon the intelligences, knowledges, and needs of a wide array of humans. When we talk about more than human, that means we also need to, in addition, draw upon the knowledges and intelligence of the other life forms that we share the planet with, and increasingly AI. And I love what you guys, Katharina and Thomas, are proposing, having a representative of let's say, nature based on AI, drawing from non-human biased data. Like that opens up a whole other realm of possibilities. So I really hope you get your funding. I think it's been a very short, but I think hopefully very productive and stimulating conversation. And again, thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you, Aric.